I still remember the exact moment I saw it, the "For Sale" sign swinging in the morning breeze outside my window, mocking me in a way I never thought possible. One day, my son had knelt in front of me, hands trembling with excitement, eyes wet with that desperate pride only children feel when they think they're doing the right thing. "This is your forever home, Mom," he said. I laughed, thinking it was just one of his little speeches, that he'd finally learned how to make me feel important. I should have known better. It was early fall, the kind of morning where the air is crisp but not cold, where leaves crunch underfoot and the scent of wet earth makes you want to close your eyes and inhale forever. I was sitting in my armchair by the window, the one with the faded yellow cushion that my husband had insisted on keeping even though it had long lost its color. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee, the smell strong, almost bitter, like the mornings I had spent raising two boys with nothing but hope and exhaustion, and that's when I saw it. The sign. Bright red letters on a stark white board. For sale. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe it was just a reflection, or maybe the sun hitting the window at just the wrong angle. But no. There it was. Leaning against the edge of the lawn like some cruel announcement. I put down my coffee so abruptly it sloshed over the rim, a little warm river spilling across the table. My hands shook, not with anger at first, but with disbelief. I called out to him, my voice higher than I meant it to be, almost breaking in panic. "Daniel! What is this?" He came out from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag, looking just like he always did when he thought he was about to tell me something good. "Mom, oh, Mom, you saw it." "I saw it," I said, my voice steadier now, though my stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. "Tell me this isn't happening. Tell me this is just a joke." He didn't answer right away. He just rubbed the back of his neck and avoided my eyes. That was when the first wave of betrayal hit, not the kind that slaps you across the face, but the kind that seeps in slowly, the way cold wind sneaks into your bones. Mom, I thought it was the right thing," he said finally. His words were soft, hesitant, almost pleading. "The right thing?" I repeated, letting the disbelief roll around my tongue. "Selling the house. My house. My home. The one I've lived in for 40 years. He looked down at his feet, silent for a long moment. Then he said, almost in a whisper, "I didn't want you to worry about things." That was the thing about betrayal, it never comes neatly packaged. It hides behind excuses, behind care and concern and love. And in that moment, I realized I didn't know my son at all, or maybe I had never really wanted to. I sat down heavily in my chair, gripping the arms as if they could anchor me to something real. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in the quiet of the morning. The wind rattled the window pane, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything except sit there feeling the ground slip out from under me. "You should have told me," I said finally, the words trembling like fragile glass. "I deserve to know. Not to find out, like this." He finally met my gaze, and I saw the guilt etched into every line of his face. "I thought, maybe it would be better for you. I didn't want you to be sad, Mom." I laughed, though it came out sharp and brittle, the kind of laugh you make when the world has turned upside down. "Sad? You think selling my home, my life, would make me anything but broken?" He didn't answer. And in that silence, I remembered the first time we'd walked through this house together. It was just a small, two-story place with creaky stairs and a garden that had seen better days. I had been newly widowed, unsure of myself and the world, and he had been just a boy, barely old enough to understand. I had promised myself then, as I promised every morning since, that this house would be my sanctuary, my constant in a world that had already taken so much from me. And now it was gone, or at least, that was how it felt. The next hours passed in a blur of arguments and tears. I don't remember what exactly was said, only the feel of the sun fading, the shadows stretching across the floor, and the cold bite of the breeze slipping in through the cracked window. At some point, I found myself walking through the rooms, touching the furniture, the wallpaper, the little imperfections that made this place mine. Every scratch on the floor, every dent in the door frame, every corner that smelled faintly of lavender and old books, my life was in these walls. And he was going to erase it. I could hear him following me, his footsteps hesitant, trying to offer comfort, but all I felt was a growing distance. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," he said. "I just thought you'd like a fresh start. Somewhere smaller, easier to manage." I turned to him then, and for the first time, I saw him not as my son but as someone capable of secrets, of decisions that could hurt me without him even realizing the weight of it. "A fresh start," I said, my voice quiet but cutting. "Do you know what it means to me? Every inch of this house is a memory. Every corner holds a story. How can you just decide it's time to erase all that?" He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. "Mom, I didn't want to see you struggle." I thought. His voice broke, and he looked away. I walked past him and ran my fingers along the banister, feeling the smooth worn wood beneath my fingertips, and I realized then that I had spent decades pouring my love into this house, into my family, into the quiet rhythms of everyday life. And now, in a single thoughtless, or perhaps thought-out, moment, it was being pulled out from under me. The smell of coffee lingered, mingling with the faint scent of old pine from the furniture. I sat on the edge of the bed, the sheets still soft from the morning sun, and I let the tears come. Not the kind of tears you can stop, but the ones that soak into your chest and make it ache. I thought about my husband then, gone these 20 years, and how he would have handled this. With a laugh, perhaps, and then a calm plan. I thought about the neighbors, who had watched my children grow, who had lent sugar and kindness over decades. I thought about every holiday, every birthday, every quiet night when the house had held us safe and warm. And in that moment, the betrayal wasn't just about the house. It was about trust, about understanding, about the invisible bonds we carry with those we love. My son had stepped into a space I had never wanted anyone else to enter, and he had made a choice without me. I didn't sleep that night. I walked from room to room, tracing the familiar paths, touching the things that were mine. Outside, the "For Sale" sign caught the moonlight, and I imagined it swinging, casting long shadows across the lawn, a reminder that nothing stays the way we hope. By morning, I had made a decision. I didn't know yet what it would be, or how I would fix this, but I knew one thing: I could not let the story of my home, of my life, end with a single act of misunderstanding or betrayal. My memories, my family, my sense of belonging, they were worth more than anything else. And somehow, I would make him understand that. I only wished I knew how. I remember walking through the kitchen the next morning, sunlight spilling across the faded tiles, and wondering how I had ever felt safe here. The smell of toast and coffee lingered faintly, like ghosts of mornings past. Daniel was in the living room, sitting stiffly on the couch, staring at the floor as if the carpet could explain his choices. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I felt my chest tighten with the slow, familiar ache of disappointment. "You know, Mom," he started, voice low, almost ashamed, "I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at him, really looked. There was the same face I had kissed as a child, the same laugh I had loved, but now it carried the weight of secrecy. "Then why did you?" I asked quietly, the words trembling, heavy with years of love and sudden betrayal. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up an old photograph from the coffee table, me, 20 years younger, holding him in my arms after his first day of school. I remembered that day, the smell of new crayons, the crisp air outside, his tiny hand clutching mine like he would never let go. And yet, here he was, holding a picture of the past as if it could erase what he had done in the present. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Something I thought would make things easier." "Easier?" I repeated, bitterness seeping into my tone. You think keeping secrets makes life easier? He nodded, eyes flicking nervously to the window, to the "For Sale" sign that still swayed gently outside. I didn't want you to worry. About money, about the house, about me. I sank into the armchair, the one with the faded yellow cushion that had borne witness to decades of life. Worry about you? I've worried every day since you were born, Daniel. That's my job. I don't need secrets to add to it. He shifted uncomfortably, and then the truth spilled out, rushed and raw. The company, my company, we're in trouble. Big trouble. I thought if I sold the house quietly, it would cover the debts without dragging you into it. For a moment, nothing registered. The words hung in the room like smoke, choking me with disbelief. You would have sacrificed me. My home. For your mistakes. I didn't want to drag you into it, he said, pleading now, desperation cracking through the carefully constructed walls he'd always hidden behind. I thought I was protecting you. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of my own heartbeat fill the silence. Protecting me? Or protecting himself from facing me? I thought about all the nights I had stayed up, praying for him, for his safety, for his happiness. I had carried his fears and failures as my own, and now he thought that removing me from my home was an act of love. I wanted to scream, but instead I remembered something my mother had once told me, decades ago, when life had thrown its first real betrayal my way. Sometimes, she had said, the people who love you most are also the ones who hurt you the deepest. But pain doesn't erase love. It just tests it. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He looked smaller than he had as a boy, the confidence he had worn like armor now peeled away, leaving only fear and regret. Daniel, I said, my voice steady but trembling inside, you don't get to decide what protects me. That's my choice. My home, my life, those are mine. You can't just take them because you're scared. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I know. I see that now. And then the memories came flooding back, unbidden. I remembered the day he was born, the weight of him in my arms, soft and fragile and full of possibility. I remembered every scraped knee, every late-night worry, every triumph and heartbreak. And I realized, in a way that made my chest ache, that all of those moments had been built on trust, trust that we would stand by each other, even when the world tried to pull us apart. I thought about the night I had caught him sneaking out as a teenager, the fear and anger twisting through me, and how we had ended up laughing together hours later, exhausted but unbroken. I thought about the first time he had driven my car, nervous and fumbling, and how I had cheered him on even though I was terrified. Every moment of my life with him was etched into this house, into these walls, into the very air I breathed. And now, the betrayal felt like it had carved a hollow inside me. I walked to the window, touching the glass, feeling the cold seep into my fingertips. The sign still swayed, catching the light, and for a moment I imagined it was a message from the universe itself. Nothing is permanent, nothing is safe, nothing is guaranteed. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me, like waves hitting the shore, relentless and unyielding. Mom, Daniel said softly, breaking into my thoughts. I want to fix this. I don't know how, but I want to. I turned to him, seeing not just my son, but a man who had made mistakes, a man who had tried to shield me in the wrong way. Fix it? I asked. Do you even understand what's been broken? I think so, he whispered. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. But I want to make it right. I'll do anything. I studied him for a long moment, taking in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his eyes pleaded, the way his hands twitched with nervous energy. And I realized that love, true, enduring love, was not about perfection. It was about facing the mistakes, the betrayals, the moments of weakness, and still choosing to move forward together. Then you'll have to listen, I said finally, voice firm. You'll have to understand why this house matters, why it's more than just wood and brick. You'll have to understand the years of life that live here, and the people who trusted you to honor them. Only then can we even begin to repair what's been broken." He nodded, swallowing hard, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I saw a glimmer of hope. The morning sun had climbed higher now, casting golden light across the living room, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. I breathed it in deeply, the smell of old books, polished wood, and memories thick in the air. I didn't know what would happen next. Whether the house would be sold, whether our relationship could survive this test, whether the trust one had given so freely could ever be restored. But I knew one thing: I could not let anger or betrayal define the end of this story. I would fight for my home, for my memories, for the life I had built, and I would fight for the son I loved even when he hurt me deeply. And as I stood by the window, feeling the cool glass beneath my palms, I realized that this was only the beginning. The beginning of confrontation, of revelation, of understanding. The beginning of a chapter one had never expected but would have to face with courage and clarity. Because sometimes, the hardest lessons in life come from the people we love most. And sometimes, the places we call home are more than just walls, they are the keepers of our stories, the witnesses to our triumphs and failures, the silent guardians of our hearts. I closed my eyes and whispered a promise to myself, to the house, and perhaps to him: we would find a way through this. Somehow, we would. Days passed, though I hardly noticed them as separate from one another. The sun rose and fell, spilling light across the same familiar rooms, but nothing felt familiar anymore. I moved through the house like a ghost, touching walls, shelves, and the worn armrests of my chairs, trying to anchor myself in a world that suddenly seemed unsteady. Daniel was there, hovering in the spaces between, always trying to fix what had been broken, always trying to explain, and always reminding me of the betrayal that had hollowed the floor beneath my feet. It was late one evening, the kind of night where shadows stretch long and every corner of the house seems to whisper secrets, that I discovered something I hadn't expected. I was sorting through old papers in the study, the air thick with the smell of dust and faded ink. There was a showbox tucked under the desk, the kind of thing I had forgotten existed, and curiosity overpowered my exhaustion. I opened it slowly, as if bracing for a blow, and inside were letters, hundreds of them, neatly tied with ribbon. Letters from my husband, from before he died, letters that told of worries and hopes, of love and of regret, and of a secret I had never known. I held one in my hand, trembling. "Daniel," I called softly, not wanting him to hear me upstairs. "Come here. Please." He appeared, hesitant, and I handed him the letter. He took it gingerly, as if it were made of glass, and read it in silence. His face drained of color, his hands trembling. "Mom," he said finally, voice breaking. This changes everything." I watched him, unsure if I wanted to hear what he had to say. "Then tell me," I said quietly. "Tell me what I need to know." He swallowed hard, eyes still fixed on the paper. "Your father, he had debts. Big ones. Ones that I only just discovered after his death. And he tried to shield you from them, just like I tried to shield you now. But he didn't manage it. And now it's all falling onto me." I sank into the chair, my chest tight, my heart racing. I had always imagined my husband as invincible, as the steady anchor in my life, but here was a man who had kept burdens secret, who had tried to protect me in ways that only caused harm in the end. And now my son was carrying that same weight, repeating a cycle I had never noticed. "You didn't know," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "And you thought you were protecting me. But why the house? Why not tell me?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the raw truth in his eyes. "I thought if I sold it quietly, paid off the debts, and kept you safe, everything could be controlled. I didn't want to see you hurt like I hurt when I found out." The betrayal twisted inside me again, sharp and bitter, but now it was tangled with understanding. I remembered the nights I had spent worrying, the fear that had gnawed at me when he was a boy, and the realization that he had inherited that same need to protect, even if it meant making mistakes. I thought about all the little moments that had led to this point, the first scraped knee he had brought home, the time he had lied to protect a friend, the nights he had stayed up worried about his own future. Every one of those moments had been driven by love, by a desire to shield, by the fear of failing the people he cared about most. And now, in this house, surrounded by memories and the lingering scent of old books and polished wood, I understood him in a way I never had before. But understanding did not erase the pain. I ran my hands over the desk, the smooth wood familiar under my palms, and felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Daniel," I said finally, voice trembling. "You've hurt me, deeply. But I see now you didn't mean to. You were trying, in your way, to do right by me. That matters. It doesn't fix the betrayal, but it does matter." He knelt beside me then, his hand brushing against mine, and I felt a wave of warmth and sorrow wash through me. "I don't know how to fix it," he admitted. "I don't know if I can. But I'll try, Mom. I'll try for us. For the house. For you." I looked around the room, at the walls lined with photographs and books, at the faded yellow armchair, at the memories that had shaped my life, and I realized that this was bigger than any single act of betrayal. This was about family, about love, about the threads that bind us even when they fray. And then, as the night deepened and shadows danced across the walls, I made a decision. I would not let this house, my home, my life, be reduced to a "for sale" sign swinging in the breeze. I would fight, not out of anger, but out of love. I would confront the past, face the betrayals, and find a way to preserve the life we had built together. Over the next few days, Daniel and I worked together, sifting through papers, contacting old friends and neighbors, piecing together the financial puzzle that had haunted us. It was exhausting, emotional, and at times, painfully slow. But with every discovery, every solution, I felt the bond between us strengthen, fragile but real. We were learning, in our own way, what it meant to trust again, to forgive, and to protect one another without causing harm. One afternoon, as I sat in the living room watching him on the phone, negotiating with a creditor, I realized something profound. Betrayal, as sharp and piercing as it could be, was never the end of a story. It was a turning point, a moment that demanded courage, honesty, and love to navigate. And in that realization, I found a strange sense of peace. Later that evening, we stood together outside, the "for sale" sign still in the yard, waiting to be removed. Daniel looked at me, his eyes full of remorse and determination. "Mom," he said softly, "we'll get through this. I promise. I won't let it happen again." I nodded, feeling the cool evening breeze against my skin, the smell of damp earth and falling leaves grounding me in the present. "I know," I said. "And I believe you. But you need to understand, this house, this life, it's more than just walls and furniture. It's memories, it's love, it's every choice, every mistake, every triumph. And that cannot be sold." He smiled then, a tentative, hopeful smile, and for the first time since that terrible morning, I felt the weight lift slightly from my chest. The house was still standing. Our bond was tested but not broken. And perhaps, just perhaps, we had learned what it truly meant to love, to protect, and to forgive. I stayed by the window that night, the moonlight spilling across the floor, thinking about all that had happened. About betrayal, about mistakes, about the courage it took to face them. About the son who had hurt me, who had scared me, but who had also shown me that love could endure even the sharpest pain. And I whispered a quiet prayer to myself, to the house, and to the memories it held. We would endure. We would protect what mattered most. And we would carry these lessons with us, in our hearts, for the rest of our days. The morning after we had finally removed the "for sale" sign, I felt a strange calm settle over the house. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet leaves and pine, and sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the familiar corners I had feared I might lose forever. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest. Daniel was in the kitchen, making coffee in that familiar, slightly clumsy way that had always made me smile. I leaned against the doorway, watching him, and felt a surge of warmth and exhaustion all at once. "You're up early," I said, voice soft. He glanced over, offering that tentative, hopeful smile he had learned to give when we were rebuilding trust. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Still thinking about everything." I nodded, understanding. I, too, was still untangling the threads of the past week, the betrayals, the secrets, the anger that had cut so sharply through my life. But now, there was also understanding. Compassion. Forgiveness, not because the pain had vanished, but because love demanded it. We sat together at the table, the aroma of coffee filling the room, and I realized that this house, my sanctuary for decades, had become something more than walls and memories. It had become a witness to resilience, to confrontation, to reconciliation. "Mom," Daniel said quietly, stirring his coffee, "I'm sorry. For everything. For not trusting you, for trying to protect you in the wrong way. For all of it." I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "I know," I said softly. "I see now that your intentions came from love, even if the execution was messy. We all make mistakes. The important part is learning from them and holding each other through the pain." He looked at me, eyes glistening, and I felt a surge of pride and sorrow all at once. My son, the boy I had held in my arms, the man who had scared me and hurt me, was still the same soul I had loved from the start. But he was also someone I had learned to see differently, more fully, with all the flaws and the courage that made him human. I thought about the years behind me, raising children, loving a husband who had left too soon, watching neighbors come and go, celebrating birthdays and enduring heartbreaks. I thought about the countless little decisions that had shaped my life, decisions made out of love, out of fear, out of hope. And I understood, more clearly than ever, that life was a tapestry woven with both joy and betrayal, with mistakes and forgiveness, with endings that felt like beginnings. Later that afternoon, I walked through the garden, my fingers brushing over the familiar plants and flowers. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle, and the world seemed, for a brief moment, in perfect balance. I inhaled deeply, tasting the sharp scent of fallen leaves and damp earth, and felt an almost tangible connection to everything I had built, everything I had loved, everything I had lost and reclaimed. I stopped near the old oak tree in the yard, the one under which Daniel had once played as a boy, and closed my eyes. Memories surged, him running barefoot across the lawn, laughing, the first time he had ridden his bike without training wheels, late nights spent reading together, his head resting against my shoulder. And I realized that this house, these walls, this home, it was not just a building. It was a keeper of stories, a witness to love and mistakes, a silent guardian of generations. That evening, as Daniel and I sat together by the fireplace, I spoke to him as I had not spoken in years. "Son," I said, voice steady but tender, "I want you to remember something. Life will test you. People will make choices that hurt you, sometimes without meaning to. But the measure of a family, of love, is not in never being hurt. It's in how we respond. How we forgive. How we protect each other while letting each other grow." He nodded, listening intently, and I felt a surge of hope. The bond between us, strained and tested, was stronger now, not because the betrayal had disappeared, but because it had been faced, understood, and transformed. I continued, voice soft, almost a whisper. "This house, my son, is a part of me. But more importantly, it is a part of us. The memories, the lessons, the love, they cannot be sold or erased. And you are part of that, whether you see it or not." You carry pieces of it in you, just as I carry pieces of you. He reached for my hand again, squeezing gently. I understand, Mom. I truly do. And I will honor it. I promise. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt complete. Not because the house was safe, or because the financial troubles had been addressed, but because the love, the trust, and the bond we had almost lost were still here. Still real. Still ours. Later that night, I lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the house, the faint creak of the floorboards, the whisper of the wind through the trees. I thought about my life, the joys and the betrayals, the heartbreaks and the triumphs, the lessons learned and the memories cherished. And I realized that all of it, every heartache, every moment of fear, every act of love, had brought me to this place. A place of understanding. A place of peace. A place where my story, and my family's story, could continue. I whispered a quiet message into the darkness, a promise to myself and to those who would come after me: love deeply, forgive willingly, and never forget that home is not just a place. It is the sum of all the moments, the laughter, the tears, the memories, and the people who make it alive. And no betrayal, no mistake, no act of fear can take that away. As sleep claimed me, I felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by the gentle certainty that our story, mine and Daniel's, would endure. And in that endurance, I found the truest meaning of home, not the walls, not the furniture, not even the land, but the love and life we choose to protect, nurture, and remember. I had lost nothing in the end. I had gained understanding, forgiveness, and the quiet joy of knowing that the people we love, even when they falter, remain our family. And that, my dear ones, is the greatest inheritance we can pass on.